What pre-takeoff checks do you perform between applying full throttle and pitching for rotation? If you pause to think about that, or even wonder what checks are possible on the takeoff roll, then it's time to review your takeoff procedures. Here's a system for light GA airplanes I like. It's simple, and it can catch a problem in the last moments before that problem becomes an emergency. It's called the REACT check. The mnemonic stands for RPM, engine gauges, airspeed, centerline, and takeoff point. There are 5 potential abort points on the takeoff run. Fail any one and you chop the throttles and come down on the brakes. Pass all 5 in sequence and you commit to flight. RPM means that you see full static power as the throttle goes to the takeoff position. For a fixed pitch prop, this is typically 300 to 500 RPM less than the red line on a standard day at sea level. But you must learn the normal number for your engine and prop combination. It's not red line because the resistance at the prop is higher while the aircraft is still stationary. With a constant speed prop and normal aspiration, you should see redline RPM and close to the current ambient air pressure for manifold pressure. Turbocharged motors should reach their expected boost. Again, you need to know your airplane. But no matter what, if you don't see the expected power, abort. No questions, just abort. The takeoff roll is no place to debug a problem, and that's the point. This is a binary decision gate. If RPM is a go, you proceed. If it's not, you stop. Sure, you might see low RPM, abort the takeoff, pull off on the taxiway, and then realize it's because the density altitude is high, and you just can't get static RPM with your fixed pitch prop. That's fine. Go back and try again, knowing the expected RPM will be 2100 instead of 2300. But what if, after that takeoff abort, and with time to consider the situation, you realize you forgot to lean for maximum power, or left the carb heat on from the previous landing? Now you can correct the oversight comfortably and completely before trying again. Maybe you don't see an obvious problem, but something is clearly wrong. So you get the plane checked out and discover that cylinder number 4 has a floating exhaust valve. That could have turned into a complete engine failure at 100 feet AGL and climbing. But you chose to abort the takeoff instead. Back to the takeoff roll. If RPM is good, next check the engine instruments. Any anomalies? Abort. All look normal? Continue to the airspeed indicator. It should be alive and reading by now. No airspeed? Abort. Increasing as expected? Continue. And look outside to ensure you're still on center line. You've been heads down for a couple seconds, so it's essential to get visual again. This is also about the time lift is unloading the landing gear, so failure to have the crosswind correction already in place will start to show up. The takeoff point is usually overlooked by pilots accustomed to small aircraft on long runways. This is a predetermined point on the runway at which you still have time to stop without a significant overrun if you abort. For an aircraft with a 1,500-foot ground roll departing a 7,000-foot runway, this is almost comical. Gee, we've gone a bit far without getting airborne. We're usually off the ground long before mid-field. You know, maybe I ought to abort this takeoff and see what's wrong. And you still have 2,000 feet to stop. But do the same on a 3,000-foot runway, and at the moment you should be rotating, you only have 1,500 feet remaining. If you're traveling 60 knots, you're only 15 seconds from that far end of the runway, and every second you delay costs you 100 feet more. For really short runways, the takeoff abort point may be well before normal rotation speed. A common Bush rule is that you need 75% of rotation speed by 50% of the runway, or this takeoff just won't happen. I admit to actually pacing off some backcountry strips and tying a brightly colored rag to a bush to mark my takeoff abort point. Next time you're holding short, chart the path of a REACT check for your cockpit. Then pick a visual point down the departure runway where you still have distance to stop. When it's time to pour on the coals, run your react. RPM, stop now or proceed. Engine gauges, stop now or proceed. Airspeed, stop now or proceed. Centerline, stop now or proceed. Takeoff point, stop now or depart. The odds of needing to abort on this or any subsequent takeoff are slim, but if you make it a habit to pass through those 5 decision gates on your way to airborne, one of these days aborting a takeoff roll due to an anomaly could just save your life. Or at least your airplane.